My father, who was in World War II, used to talk about somebody, if you want somebody in a foxhole with you, you know, that kind of person. That's Marcello. He's the guy you want in the foxhole.
There's one guy I'd like in the foxhole.
What?
There's one guy I'd want in the foxhole.
Who's that?
The one upstairs.
Oh, yeah. That's a good choice.
And I would wish he wasn't calling me.
Well, I would hope not.
No.
I would hope not. So we've probably been recording now, and that's kind of an interesting anecdote to start with, because they say there are no atheists in a foxhole. You know, people are.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've had that problem before, and when I was in boot camp, we had a terrible electric storm, and there were all kinds of people in our barracks, and everyone was on their hands and knees praying. When I was fascinated by the lightning and everything, and I went outside on the porch where there was a roof over it, so I could see the weather developing, you know. And we had one young man that was looking out the window, and a lightning bolt hit the small tree, and it blinded him.
Oh my goodness!
And he was sent home.
Oh my goodness!
They wouldn't keep him anymore. They couldn't keep him because they couldn't see.
But you were not on your hands and knees. You were out there looking at the weather. Isn't that interesting? So we are here today with Tom Smith, who I found out about him because I got a letter to the editor from Sandra Stempel-Kisselbeck about his recent trip to Washington, D.C. on an honor flight. And so we're hoping to hear about that today, but we're also hoping just to hear about you and your service. Let's start with the honor flight. Tell us about how that came to be, how you got involved in that.
Well, I used to work at the Altamont Fair for 23, 24 years.
What did you do at the Altamont Fair?
I drove the trams, and I took care of the trams.
Oh, wow.
And at the Altamont Fair down at Gate 3, they put up a barn. Now, I don't know, there's a specialty about the barn where there's no nails in it or something.
Yeah, it's for the old song performances, and it's an old Dutch barn. So it's post and beam, and it's all 10 joints. Yeah. It's a beautiful barn, yeah.
Well, at that time, there was a group of people that were trying to recruit people to go on this honor flights. Mm-hmm. And I at that time wasn't too much interested, but I talked to the people, and I said, well, someday maybe I'd like to go down on one. And it went many years since then, because I'd say it was probably got to be better than 20, 25 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. So you remembered that for a long time. And I'm just going to do a little interruption here because I just looked up the history of the honor flight. And it was two different men in two different parts of the country that were interested in getting that going. And one was a physician's assistant in Ohio, and he had a lot of elderly patients who were World War II veterans, and they kept talking about when the monument was built for World War II that they were going to go, but they never did. Yeah. And another was a business owner in the Carolinas who had a father who had been in World War II and just could see the importance of going. So it started this whole network, this whole organization where people contribute so that veterans like yourself get to go to D.C. and see the monuments. Had you ever been in Washington, D.C. before?
Yes, I had. But I was there as a young man, a boy.
Yeah.
My dad took us over there.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was basically the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Monument and the Jefferson Monument. Mm-hmm. So we went and saw those. But I took my family down after I was married and had children. I took them down, and I'm not sure whether the Vietnam War was up at that time, but
The wall, the long
yeah.
wall, yeah.
Well, the World War II was not there. The Mount Suribachi monument was not there. The Air Force was not there. In fact, they said that because of if the Air Force monument had been there, the plane that hit the Pentagon building could never have hit it.
Oh, my goodness.
Because they were over 170 feet high or something of that nature. And there's three different things. It looks like have you ever seen the Thunderbirds do the missing plane
formation? Yes.
Yeah, well, when they do that, they peel off, two peel off the side, one peels off. And each one of those spears or spires or whatever you want to call them, each one of them is a different height.
Mm-hmm.
And but they claim that if the plane coming in could never have got to the building because they couldn't have got low enough. If they went over the top of these monuments, they couldn't have hit the building. They would have been past the building
I see. Isn't
before
that
they could get it
interesting?
down.
Huh. So we were back 25 years ago when you first heard of this. And what made you decide now at this point in your life? How old are you?
Now I'm 87.
Oh, my goodness. And so what made you decide at age 87 that you wanted to take this
Well,
trip?
I am a friend of, I can't remember now.
Is it the town supervisor?
Yeah, Jennifer and
Sean Lyons.
Sean Lyons.
Mm-hmm.
And I was down to see Sean on something altogether different. And he happened to mention the fact about the honor flight. And I said, yeah, I'd like to go down on them one of these days. Why not now, he says. So I went and he got me in touch with the right people, but he works on that with the group that does the management of the honor flights. And his wife works as a companion on the honor flights. So he asked me if I'd like to go. He said, let me check and see if I can get you on the flight. So it turns out he did get me on the flight, and well, his wife was my companion.
So tell us about your day from start to finish.
Okay, my day started at 4:15 in the morning.
Oh my goodness! What time? That's not the time you usually wake up. I take it.
No.
Okay.
And Sean and Jennifer picked me up at my house because they both live up on the hill where I live. And they stopped and picked me up, took me over. We went to the CBA school, and that's where this picture is taken.
And what Tom has
gym.
there is a pamphlet of the day. It's a glossy pamphlet, and there's a picture on the cover that has all of the veterans gathered together that went on this particular trip. So that's a nice memento.
Yeah, so then they took us over to CBA school, and in this booklet it also has a picture of the boys that go to school there. And because that is a military type school,
Mm-hmm.
They all have uniforms. And they remind you so much of the Marine uniform. They're so neat and trim, you know. So anyhow, they ushered us in and to wherever we had to go. When we went in the door, I got this shirt that I have on.
And the shirt is a blue polo shirt with an insignia that has a flag, an American flag, and are those wings? I'm looking across the table trying to see exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, that's an eagle underneath.
Okay.
This is an eagle. Yeah.
It's very patriotic looking. And also, I should mention the hat that Tom is wearing, which I had to ask what it was. And it is a picture of his ship. He had served in the Navy during the Korean War, and it's the USS Wright. So he is dressed
well done.
for this podcast. So let's go back to, you're at CBA, greeted by these young men in uniform.
And they put us all together so we could have this group picture taken. And our companions for the day were meeting each one, because actually Jennifer pushed me around in a wheelchair all day. And I was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I was in St. Peter's Hospital, because I had gone in Monday morning with my wife to Walmart's to do some shopping. And I walked in, my wife went in one door, I went in the other, because I usually ride one of the electric carts. But I got inside the door, and all of a sudden my legs went like rubber. I couldn't stand up.
Oh my gosh.
So I flopped my way over trying to get to a bench that they had there. And I got over there, and right in front of the bench was a gentleman with a cart. And he couldn't get out of the way in time. And I couldn't get to the bench. So I just grabbed a hold of the basket on the cart and lowered myself to the floor. And then after I was down, I kind of passed out.
Oh my goodness.
So they called an ambulance, took me into the hospital, and on Wednesday they released me.
Are you all right?
Yeah. But on Wednesday they released me. Then I had 2 days to recover, Thursday and Friday.
So just after this hospital
Saturday
experience, you still made the trip?
I made it 2 days later, 3 days later.
Wow. So it must have really meant a lot to you.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. It was one of the finest days that I've had in my lifetime.
Oh, isn't that
it was
a
very
tribute to that
exciting
program?
Day.
So what happened after you had your group picture taken? You were then taken to the airport?
Yes, but that was important too.
Oh, okay.
Because we went outside. They had 2 buses, CDTA buses, I believe they were, and they took us to the airport. But the exciting part of taking us to the airport was that they had a fire engine, and I don't know how many, 15 or so. I couldn't actually count them, but I would guess there's something like that. Motorcycle group with flags on the back, which do all these honor stuff. In fact, they were here in Altamont 2 weeks later for a funeral or flag day or whatever.
Yeah, we've taken pictures of them. There are 2 different groups. There's the Patriot Guards, and then the American Legion here in Altamont has the Legion Riders, and they're a very dedicated group.
Yeah, they're great people. But anyhow, they escorted us over to the airport. We all had to wait till everybody got off the bus. And then we all went into the airport together. And we opened the door, and I'll be conservative, there had to be over 150 people or more there.
Oh, was that a surprise?
Absolutely. We didn't know this was happening.
And this is at the crack of dawn still, really early, yeah.
And it turns out that there was a bunch of Boy Scouts. There was a a choir from one of the schools that sang for us. There was a bunch of flag bearers that were in Boy Scouts, military, and they were all there carrying the flags. There was all kinds of people there. That Senator Paul Tonko was there.
Oh, the congressman.
Dan McCoy was there. And
the county executive.
A lieutenant general from the service was there. Not general, lieutenant commander, I think it was. A lieutenant colonel. I can't remember what his rank was. But he was there, and they all spoke to us. And we were all given a bag, which is what I'm carrying. We were all given that bag, all full of goodies, candies, pretzels, all kinds of stuff to use that day to feed on the flight for us and our companions. When we got on the flight, we got stuck on the car mat for almost an hour. There was a window or something that was leaking air, and they wouldn't take off without repairing it first. So we had over 100 people on that plane. And that included the veterans and the companions. And we went on the trip, got down to Baltimore, where the flight landed. Then going from, when we got out of the, I got to straighten it out. When we came into Baltimore, there was 2 fire engines, one on one side, one on the other. And as we came around, taxied around to get into the airport, these 2 fire engines had fire cannons, and they fired water over.
Oh, like an arch.
An arch over the top.
Gosh, so you had fanfare leaving and fanfare arriving.
Every place we went.
Oh, my.
And we had, when we got into the airport, everybody in the airport was running up and shaking our hands and thanking us for our service, which made us all feel great. And then we left the airport. We got onto some buses, 2 buses there, and we had a police escort, one in front, one in back, sirens going all the way, going up the highway to take us into Washington and to the where the monuments were. They had, like I said, the sirens were going. The one in the back, every once in a while, would run up alongside us so that we could keep going at full speed. They would run up alongside us and block off the entranceway. Everybody that was on the highway, because of the sirens going, pulled off and just let us go by. And then this one in the back would pull up and block off the entrance so nobody could come onto the merge
freeway.
into the traffic.
So it was like the Red Sea parting. The traffic was parting, and you were going straight
similar
through.
to that, yes.
Yeah.
But then we got into the first thing we saw, I guess, was the Pentagon building and the Washington Monument. We pulled over by the Washington Monument, and then we all unloaded there. Then we went to each one of the monuments. And all of the monuments, we had so much time for each one. So we went, I think, to Mount Suribachi. I don't know if you remember about the Marines raising the flag on Mount Suribachi.
Yes, a 6-week battle, one of the bloodiest. And
that was the one that was, I think that was the first one. Then there was, I may get these out of order, but there was the Air Force one, which was that big, tall, showing the missing pilot. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned about the fact that they were so high that a plane could never have got down to the building without hitting those spires first. Mm-hmm. And if they hit them, then they would have never got to
deflected,
the building.
Yeah.
But they also had a color guard of men, the two on the outside carrying rifles, and then the two flags on the inside. And they all of these monuments are so painstakingly, almost like the people are there, but they're monuments.
Well, I looked up because I didn't know what the Korean War monument looked like, and I found it almost shocking. It's a whole group of men in ponchos, like rain ponchos, and they look like life-size people.
Yeah, they are.
And what an unusual... You think of monuments as usually being sort of like the World War II monument, pillars that are kind of formal. Or we're very familiar with the Vietnam War monument, which is that shiny, shiny wall with names. But to kind of recreate what it was like, what was your impression when you saw the Korean? Because that was your war.
I was so impressed with all of them.
Yeah.
I don't say that, I don't think that the Korean monument meant any more to me than any of them did. Because I have 5 brothers, and we've all been in the service.
Oh, my goodness.
We all enlisted in the service at one time or another.
So your family, you had tell me a little about your family growing up. What did your parents do for a living?
Oh, my father was a tile setter.
And was he somebody who had also been a veteran? Or no? What made you, all 5 of you, so patriotic?
Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunate, I don't know. We were at that time in history of being where the wars were so close together. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the Second World War was supposed to be the end of wars, but that isn't the way it happened.
No. So you were in the Navy. What about your other brothers?
Okay, my oldest brother was 20 years in the Air Force.
Oh, he was a career Air Force person. Mm-hmm.
My next oldest brother was a Marine. My next oldest brother was a Navy. I was in the Navy, and my youngest brother was in the Marines. So they all served time.
Well, your mother must have been a nervous wreck. I mean, how did she get through that? All 5 of her boys, but you all survived.
We all survived. We were all very fortunate to. We were in. When you go in the service, you don't tell them where you're going to go. They tell you where you're going to go. And we were all stationed at different places that didn't involve being on the land where the wars were being fought.
But you were in the Navy during the time of the Korean War, so you were part of that effort. You were.
Oh, I have the Korean ribbon. Mm-hmm. But I was in that area. Mm-hmm. And in fact, they were bombing Quemo Island that we could see from the ship, we could see all the bombs going off and everything on the island. But all of us and my brother, my oldest brother, who was in the Air Force, he served he was the organist, choir director, and he was the organist for the Air Force Academy for 4 years.
So he was very musical.
Oh yeah, he'd been playing since he was 3 years old.
What did he play? What instrument?
Well, he played piano, and played the organ, played violin, the accordion.
Oh my goodness!
And my next oldest brother was a trumpet player, a drummer, trombones.
Do you play something?
I played at the saxophone.
Oh, well, that's a cool instrument.
I started with a clarinet, but my fingers weren't big enough to cover the holes when I was just a young boy. And so the band leader said, "Why don't you try the saxophone?" I said, "Okay." So I got a saxophone, but I got a soprano sax, which is only about that big. And before I was done, I had a soprano sax, I had an alto sax, and I had an E-flat tenor sax.
Oh my goodness. Well, I know when we were talking on the phone just to set up the podcast, you talked about, and it's a common term, how the Korean War is the forgotten war. And so it would be just good to hear a little about your own experience. We know what ship you were on because it's embroidered on your hat, but tell us about life on that and what you did, what your duties were, what it was like during the war to be there.
I went to Bainbridge, Maryland for my basic training.
Then this is where you had that experience where there was the lightning storm.
Yes.
That you opened the conversation with.
And then I went to Norfolk, Virginia, and down to Gitmo, which was Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, where I picked up my ship. And we went on a trip to the Mediterranean.
And what were your duties on the ship?
I distilled water. The ship I was on was a steam ship. Mm-hmm. It was powered by steam. And the water to run the boilers had to have absolutely no salt in it. And we were making water from the sea, now as we were going along. And so we had so much water for the boilers. Then we had 1,500 men on the ship, plus 500 squadron on the ship that we had to supply ship's tanks for, which would be, it could be a lot more salt in it, but it's not what come out of the ocean. It still had to be treated. And we made the water for the boilers and the ship's tanks. We had 2 double effect boilers in the forward engine room, and we had 1 triple effect boiler in the mess deck area.
That's really fascinating. And now that I've heard you say this, of course it makes perfect sense. You're out on the ocean, you need water, but you can't use the salt water. So you'd have to have your own distilling plant on the ship in order to get the water salt free.
Right.
So you were in the Mediterranean, and then what?
Oh, I was in Scotland, Holland, France, Italy, Gibraltar.
Oh, so you really saw the world. The ads say join the military, see the
Jamaica, to the Panama Canal.
And how old were you at this time?
Be 20.
So young, very young.
I'd be 20,
Does anyone
20 to 24?
One place stand out in your mind as really
no,
eye-opening?
Not really. I like many places, but of all of the... Now, so many people are interested in going to foreign countries and thinking that the women and the men are so superior to ours. But I got news for them. They're not. They don't even come close. And there is no place I've been, and I've been in China and Japan, Hawaii, and all those places. And I've been up to the North Atlantic. I'm ordering the Blue Nose, they call it, because I crossed the Arctic Circle.
Oh my gosh!
I also had, which is officially recorded in the files on the right, that I had 2 birthdays one year. I crossed the international dateline.
Oh, that's great.
And when I went there, I was on one side, had my birthday. The next day was the same day, starting all over again. So I had 2 official birthdays that year. So I could really say I'm 88 years old.
So, where in your whole 4 years of service did the Korean War come? Was it in the middle or towards the end?
I was right in while it was going on. 51 to 55.
So you were stationed in that area for that whole time?
No. I was all over the world.
During what time? You said you could see the bombing during,
I don't. It would have to be around. I think it was around in 54 sometime.
Because I know in the beginning it was very desperate, and it looked like it was going to be lost with North Korea pushing all the way down south, and then there was the resurgent back when the UN and the United States got involved. But is it frustrating for you to have this be the forgotten war? Does it feel to you like people, because there was never really a clear victory or even a peace treaty, does it feel unfinished?
Well, actually, it was never even a war.
That's right. It
was a conflict.
Truman called it, yes, that's right. A police
God.
Yeah. So was that hard for you? I mean, not getting the same recognition maybe your brothers did in World War II? Or no? No,
I only had one brother in World War II.
The oldest
one?
And
he was a foster brother.
Oh, okay.
And he was over in New Guinea. He was a corpsman. Mm-hmm. And at the end of his enlistment, they needed corpsmen, and they wouldn't let him go home. So they made him serve another year. So he served actually 5 years for it. But somewheres in this area, he had a friend that he used to come up to see. Because for many years, I hadn't seen or heard of him. And this was when we lived down in Mount Vernon. Then I went into service. I got married, came out of the service, got married, went to Massachusetts. I came back here. And when I was doing some work over in the Veterans Hospital, we were laying some block in there. And I come walking out of the building one time, and there he was. He had malaria, and they wouldn't let him go. They let everybody else go, but they wouldn't let him go because he was so much needed being the corpsman.
That's some story. Well, our time has gone so quickly. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to end with for people to know, either about your honor flight experience or...
Well, as far... I can honestly say that the honor flight was far more pleasing to me than I thought it would be. I mean, I knew it would be nice, and I even as a young boy, I used to dream about the Lincoln Monument. When you would see him sitting in that chair and look down on you, I almost swore that there's somebody sitting there looking at you.
He felt alive.
Yeah.
And you saw this when as a young boy.
I saw that as a young child, and I saw it again when I brought my kids, and I just saw it again now. And it has all the Gettysburg Address and all of that carved into the walls of the monument. It's really a beautiful thing. But I am so pleased and thankful that I had the opportunity to go, and that all of these people who set this thing up are amazing people, that they could control that many people and have that much going on all day long. You couldn't ask for a better day.
Well, thank you for sharing this day with us. I feel almost like I was there.
Oh, I got one thing else. I
sure.
got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is Senator Bob Dole. Do you remember him?
Sure.
He was sitting at the entrance, I believe it was to the Air Force. And he was sitting there. He's sitting in a wheelchair now. He's quite old now. Mm-hmm. And I have pictures taken with him. So
is he a hero of yours, Bob Dole? Somebody that you...
Not particularly, except that I knew of him, and anybody can serve in the government of this country, that can control this country. They got to be heroes for. You may not agree with them on a lot of things that they do, but to me, they're important people, and some of them that are there now, I don't particularly like, but they are still elected to be there. And the ones that I do like are the ones that have been trying to make things better for all the people in this country.
Well, it sounds like a lot of it is you did appreciate the monuments themselves, but it sounds like a lot of the experience was just being recognized. You know, the fire trucks, the choir singing, the motorcade, the sort of pomp and circumstance. It just...
that was all great stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I didn't really need anybody to pat me on the back for what I did. Because, like I said, all my brothers and myself, all enlisted. There was my foster brother was drafted in World War II, and the World War II monument is superb, beautiful thing. And the Vietnam War, the wall is amazing, and to see people taking pencil and paper and trying to trace rub the names off on the
very unusual
from the
idea
wall.
For a monument. That the World War II one's sort of more traditional,
and it's big.
Yeah,
it really is, and it's on black marble, and I've worked with marble a lot during my growing up years, and
as a builder, craftsman.
Yes, I worked as a tile terrazzo marble helper for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with my dad. Worked down in Puerto Rico for 9 months, building the Caribbean Hilton Hotel.
Oh, so what were you going to say about the marble in the Vietnam Memorial? You were going to.
It's a black marble,
Right?
And it's a beautiful black. I imagine it's from Italy, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I've seen black marble from Italy down in the hotel I was just talking about in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. They have a big wall going up the stairs, and that's all that black marble. Beautiful stuff.
Well, I know I interviewed Joseph Persico, who was asked to write the words that are carved on the World War II monument. And he said it was the hardest, I think, 7 words he ever wrote. And he wrote, let me see if I can find them. Here we mark the price of freedom. And it's just a wonderful image, I think, for all of us to think of veterans like yourself being able to return to a place, the capital of the country, where that service is honored.
Yeah.
It's very, very touching.
Well, we all wanted, and myself in particular, I wanted to help the underprivileged people that didn't have a chance to serve in the services. I think that we all need to work together to make sure that we have the freedoms that we have, and not to make this political. I don't want to make this political. But the freedoms that we had, there was over 400,000 people died there in the Second World War and the Korean Wars. And they said that they have a wall of these little stars, and each star
represented a certain number of people. That's where these words are carved. He called it poetry in granite. That's where those words are, right over those stars. Here we mark the price of freedom. Yeah.
But there's 400. They represent 400,000 lives.
Well, I'm glad yours is a life that is still here. And I'm glad you had that day, and I'm glad you could share it with us. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you allowing me to do it.